Nos quite dda campus, eich bachen cyron ydyw. Heddiw rydyn ni'n mynd I drafod llyfrau Cymraeg. Yes, today we're going to talk about Welsh books, Welsh literature, because today, the 1st of March, it's St. David's Day, the patron saint of Wales himself. Seldom do I come across people who are celebrating Welsh books or Welsh authors for that fact. And the fact that this is Dydd, gŵyl, Dewi, St. David's Day, I want to give my piece. Dylan Thomas, without a doubt, is the biggest writing export we have given to the world. And I think another classic writer would probably be Richard Llewelyn, How Green Was My Valley. People have heard of that, and in its own right, it deserves to have recognition. But if you think of modern day authors, Sarah Waters doesn't get celebrated as a Welsh author, and that to me raises a lot of questions. From my own experience, when people talk about British authors, they are specifically talking about English authors. Scottish authors and Irish authors will be celebrated for the fact that they are Scottish and Irish. However, England has had a complete stronghold over Wales from an annex that has lasted over 500 years. Yes, Wales does have its own assembly and its own government. Some governmental powers have been devolved over to Wales, meaning that Welsh politicians can create laws for Wales that benefit the Welsh people, rather than the UK government or Parliament governing laws that affect Wales, but Welsh people have a different opinion to what would be ideal for us. Powers were devolved to Wales in 1997. It's not even, leaving the political aside, consider culture. I think most people would be able to identify Scottish, Irish, English. When it comes to Welsh culture, I think people would struggle to identify who Mari Lloyd and bedgowns would associate with. I truly could talk for hours of why I think my country is often overlooked in the arts. Ironic, isn't it, that we hold the Eisteddfod, which celebrates poetry, plays, writing, the arts in general. Side note, Eisteddfod is a Welsh language celebration, and I myself have an issue with that. I think Eisteddfod should include Welsh people who write in English and don't speak Welsh. And I think we need to change that, because the Welsh art are going to completely die off if we don't fix that. If I could change that tradition of Eisteddfod, I'd die a happy man. He said he was going to talk about books at the beginning, but all he's talking about is Wales. He said he was going to talk about Welsh books, but all he's doing is talking about the Welsh dilemma. Okay, let's get into it. If you're looking for something short and sweet and an author of which you will have some understanding of what they're going to do, such as Chekhov, I'd recommend the Selected Stories by Rhys. Davies. I've created a bookshop store down below with all these Welsh recommendations on, so if you want to buy these books and support me, that would be fantastic. Davies's stories solely rely on gossip. People going into each other's houses. Have you heard about this person dying? Could you believe that she's done this? Everything is just loquacious. It's really as if you're in these small little Welsh towns. One of his fictional towns is Twsti, which means black hole, and you can see how these people are completely obsessed with everything that's going around them. Anything that's external, they don't really care about. They're really interested in that internal space, and if the internal space is another person's house, all the sweeter. Rhys Davies is definitely someone I would recommend you check out, and you're not going to struggle for works. He wrote over 100 short stories, 20 novels and 3 novellas. This is an author you can really choose what you want to read. One thing to mention which really connects most of these novels, I would say, is that Davies left Wales and moved to London and refused to ever come back, but he's always drawn towards Wales, his town, home. And in Welsh we have that word that's really untranslatable, but hiraeth, a longing for home. And someone else who is a modern classic writer is Margiad Evans with her novel Turf or Stone. This is brilliant. If you like Rebecca West or Jean Rhys, I'd recommend you pick up. Evans was actually born on the border of Wales and England by Ross on Wye, and boundaries and borders really drive through her writing of where people sit along these imaginary lines, be that their beliefs, be that their ethics, be that their cultures, be that their nationalities, be that what they believe in at that present day. And as people migrate over this border or seemingly want to create something on that border, that's where all the conflict lies. And throughout Turf or Stone, which centres around a forced wedding that's going to happen, it just boils, but it never spills over. It's constantly strained under pressure. She's a writer that I've been sleeping on, utterly tempestuous. I don't actually have any of this author's works, but again, he has got the gist on making something really condensed and effective. Every time I read this author's works, I literally do send it off to other people to read. It's Cynan Jones. Most people know him as Cynan. I've heard K9, Cunan, Kevin. I wish I was joking about the last one, but it absolutely killed me. Cynan Jones's works are electrifying. I'm thinking of electrifying, let's talk about Cove, what I would say is his best work to date. It centres around a man who is on his own in a canoe who gets struck by lightning, and will he survive? You can read it in a day. It's lyrical, it's poetic, it will get all the emotions out of you. Jones's writing is akin to a good sauce. The more that you concentrate it down, the richer it gets. I could read Jones every day. Jones is a modern writer, and one book I'm halfway through at the moment is Alan Smith's Leading to Texas 2, which is about an American and Mormon family who go back to their roots and end up in the head of the valleys where I'm from, and realise that the depiction of the people they had in mind, that romantic vision of Wales with its beautiful beaches, its pastoral nature, is nothing of the sort when you get into the deep valleys of Wales. Expect a review on this dark, brutal tale, but I do want to give a thanks to Pataille. They're an indie press situated in Swansea, and they have been nothing but fantastic with me. I've spoken to them in regards to Welsh literature. They know their stuff, and someone actually mentioned a book in my Solzhenitsyn review saying, hey, I noticed that you got this book on the back. So I haven't read this, but the fact that someone was able to pick it out of this chaos, that in itself makes me want to pick this up, even though it was high on my list to read. There's Richard Gwyn's The Blue Tent, which is about a man who sees that there is a blue tent pitched, and whose tent it is. And going back to Evans's novel, this seems, I haven't read it, but it seems as though it's all about those borders and boundaries, because this man sees the occupants of this tent and wants to know whose story they're telling. And I keep going back to it, but it's true. Welsh literature always talks about that border, that disconnect, that alienation. Like through all the books that I've read, it's definitely a theme throughout it. So if that's something that speaks to you, if that's something you want to read more on, Welsh literature, people, wake up. And Pataille don't just do Welsh books. They do translated works, and this is a Latvian novel, an infamous Latvian Cold War novel called Insomnia by Albert Bells. I've not read it, I know nothing about it, but if you're looking for some different translated works, again, Pataille, check them out. We've been speaking for a long time, maybe we should get a cup of coffee, in which I would recommend the independent coffee roasters based in Cardiff, Hard Lines. If you use their code Big News, you get 10% off. I don't get a kickback from that code, but if you sign up to their monthly emails, that's the code that comes through. Big News, you get 10% off. They only ship in the UK, but if you want to support an independent Welsh business, especially during this time in the pandemic where it's so hard for businesses, check them out. I'll leave a link down below. Swiftly tangenting on the word independent, The Resume by Anachroniaeth is a work by an indie author. I actually went to university with Simon, who wrote this book, and I've not read it yet, and I've promised him under the guise that I will review it, and if I want to rip it to shreds, I'll rip it to shreds. And he said, yeah, that's great. This surreal book is about a detective who wants to catch a serial killer on the basis that it will maintain the quality of his resume. Now, you might be thinking, hey, you said this book was by Anachroniaeth and not by Simon. Who's Anachroniaeth? Anachroniaeth is actually the Welsh word for an anachronism. So you could see where all of this is going. Got to get around to reviewing it, but if you want to support an independent Welsh author, I'll leave links down below. Now, would it be a recommendation video from myself if I didn't talk about the Man Booker in some way, shape or form? Did you know the first woman to ever win the Man Booker was a Welsh woman? Yes! Bernice Ruebens, the elected member, is very close-knit Jewish family, and their son, the apple of their eye, turns to drugs and is facing an addiction. And we go through his hallucinations, his paranoia, how he overcomes his drug addiction, how he deals with it, how his family deals with it, and the consequences of those feelings. Karen from Run Right Reads did a fantastic review of the elected member. I'll leave that down below because I have to finish this and review it myself at some time. Thinking of people who review books, here are two Welsh booktubers who I'll link below. Bert and Sian at Pastori Town. Now, Bert used to work in the Waterstones, and he was pretty much like the go-to person who I, myself, and many of my friends would go to. His knowledge of books is outstanding, and I stumbled across that they had a booktube channel, and it took me a good few days to go, oh my god, it's him. He has like the best recommendations and the most obscurest recommendations. So if you're looking for something that you've like never come across, he's the person, and he's never recommended a bad book to me. Another channel who I recently came across through Molina at Molina Reads is Welsh Reader. So simple, so straightforward. It's great. Saw the username, had a complete binge sesh, and if you're looking for cozy videos that are just really nice, lovely, check them out. Going back to the books, let's not talk about the Booker Prize. Let's talk about the winner of The Guardian's own, not the Booker Prize. It's Hello Fred, We Missed You by Richard Owain Roberts. Richard Owain Roberts himself contacted me on Instagram saying, hey, can I send you my book? I've watched your stuff and I'd love to get an honest review from you. And again, I said to him, as long as if I hate it, I'll rip it apart. And he went, fine by me. And I was like, here's my address. I've not read this yet as it arrived to me like 4 days ago. But later on in March, me and Hannah at Let's Talk About Books Baby are going to buddy read this, and we'll put our honest reviews up for you to see. There's a lot of talk about this debut book before it won the Not the Booker Prize, and what I know this to be about is a small Welsh town that is struggling with interconnectivity, about communicating effectively. It talks about Netflix, texting, how do people connect when they are remote themselves. I talk about Margiad Evans and that border issue. I think this is going to come through here as well. Now, the last book I'm going to recommend, just to zhuzh it up a bit, did not come from a Welsh author, is based in Wales and won a Booker. Kingsley Amos's The Old Devils. Interestingly, I picked this up for £3 in a charity shop in Cardiff, and it's signed by Kingsley Amis himself. How lovely. Amis lived in Swansea for 5 years where this book is set, and it's not a book I know anything about. I don't actually know much about Kingsley Amis, only the fact that he's the father of Martin Amis. But I thought I'd mention this if you were looking from a different perspective of Wales, but you're interested in Wales as a location. This is it. Welsh authors you've probably not heard of. Some obscure choice, some different choices, all the way from the turn of the century to one that was published last year. Please pick up some Welsh literature. If you ever pick up a book from Wales by a Welsh author, please let me know either on my Discord or on my Instagram. Again, I will link that all down below.